I always say that language learning is a lifelong journey. It's very common, though, to get stuck along the way. It's completely normal and nothing to be ashamed of, but it can be incredibly frustrating. Plateauing with your language learning can make you feel like you're not making any progress, and your day-to-day communication can feel stagnant or stuck compared to the bigger changes that you were making when you were first starting out. Some signs of plateauing in a language include when your vocabulary or grammar feel almost elementary at times, or when your speech feels unnatural when trying to communicate complex ideas, even if you have a strong grasp of them in your mind. You might be feeling an overall lack of confidence when trying to express your ideas with spoken word, or like something's wrong with you. So why does this happen? Why does the language learning process plateau for so many of us, and what can you do to move past it? That's what this video is all about, so let's jump right in. There are 4 common experiences that lead to a plateau, starting with when your comprehension and spoken expression are not at the same level. You may be noticing a consistent discrepancy between your ability to understand information versus your ability to express your thoughts and ideas about that same information. And that's exactly what plateauing feels like. According to research from Professor Jack Richards, learners naturally retain and understand more than they can outwardly express. A perfect example of this is being able to read and understand complex novels, but not being able to write one yourself. A solution to this is something called the output hypothesis. This essentially means that you should be dedicating more time specifically to verbal communication, in addition to internalizing the language through reading, writing, and listening. I know this information seems straightforward, but you'd be surprised at how many people underestimate the value of prioritizing this. It's something I have to constantly remind my own clients to stay on top of every single time we meet. My best advice to you is to try to get this done by setting aside time on your calendar to make it a point to practice. Seek out as many opportunities as you possibly can for conversation, socialization, and verbal communication. And at the very least, set aside time to practice by yourself. You can share your thoughts and ideas out loud. You can summarize things that you're reading, watching, listening to. Make it a habit, stick to it, be consistent, and you will experience results. The next most common situation that leads to a plateau is when conversational or informal language has been prioritized for the sake of fluency, but at the expense of complexity. The opposite might actually be true for you in this scenario, meaning you've prioritized more formal, professional, or corporate speech as opposed to conversational or natural language, and that tends to be the kind of plateau that my own clients complain about. Whichever is the bigger challenge for you, that's the type of language that you'll need to prioritize. While being fluent in these specific scenarios means that you're being understood, it doesn't necessarily mean that you're being accurate or that you're progressing at the level that you're aiming for. Essentially, your language usage might not be well-rounded. You might be great at making small talk and having conversations with people, but you might also be overusing the same wording or expressions and phrases, and you're essentially not expanding your language to other contexts, topics, and so on. What's going to help here is, number 1, spending more time learning from resources that challenge you or use the language you're aiming for, such as reading the New York Times or listening to TED Talks. Number 2, discussing topics across a variety of contexts, incorporating exercises that push you to use your goal language in everything from business and work settings to colloquialisms and everything in between. Expanding topics and incorporating complex resources will help give you better command over the language, both informal and formal. The next common language learning plateau is when you're making the same beginner level mistakes over and over again, even after they're pointed out to you. This mainly happens due to a general lack of awareness and mindfulness while speaking, and also a change in your attitude towards the language. In the beginning, learners are motivated and eager to learn, but as the years go by, that spark dies out and your brain's capacity for taking in new information lessens. By being a more active detective of your speech and keeping an open, curious mind as a learner, you'll be more receptive and able to improve. This kind of language learning plateau also depends on your teacher or coach's approach if you happen to have one. Having a background in speech therapy myself has really shaped how I approach sessions with my clients, specifically when they are struggling with making the same mistakes over and over. Research has been shown to support each training, coaching, or education session or class with an explanation of the tasks and skills that will be worked on, education and awareness building, implementation of skills and tasks, and afterwards a reflection on how things went. What did you do well, or what still needs to be improved on? That's exactly the kind of approach you're going to need if you're struggling with repetitive language errors. Some of the most common errors that I hear my own clients struggle with are pronouns, articles, countable versus non-countable nouns, irregular verbs, idioms, metaphors, use of figurative language in general, and so on. The final language learning plateau I want to discuss is when your vocabulary and expressions are limited and not enough effort on your part is being made to expand them. This goes back to when I said that language learning is a lifelong journey. We need to approach each day as an opportunity to learn and absorb something new. Work on being an active participant in the language and the culture. Be a more active listener when you're surrounded by your friends, your coworkers, when you're watching TV or listening to a podcast. Don't just take the back seat and be passive in your experience. Otherwise, you will never move past your plateau. You will always feel stuck. You will always feel like you're not good enough, or that something's wrong with you, or maybe you're not smart enough, or your brain is just full. And that's not true. There is always room for improvement, for growth, for learning something new. It might take longer. It might take you a little bit of time. It will definitely take effort and energy on your part, but it's worth it. And I promise you that you will feel so much better about the whole experience when you approach each day like a student, a lifelong language learning student. In conclusion, we have learned that in order to move past a language learning plateau, you will need to start by building awareness. Determine where is there room for improvement. What can you add or take away to become even more proficient? It's also crucial that you develop systems for your language learning process. Once you've been able to build awareness, you'll be better able to create systems that make your language learning more effective. Most importantly, don't forget to immerse yourself in the language and push yourself to find new opportunities for speaking. At this point, you should have enough tools to get started, to break through that language learning plateau that you're faced with. I know you can do it. Don't give up. These feelings are not forever. Experiment with a few different suggestions from this video and you will be back on your feet in no time. If you found this video helpful, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more content around becoming a confident speaker and a better language learner. That's all for me today. I'll see you all in the next one. Bye.